You've already looked at yourself in the mirror and seen your reflection do something you didn't do. Helena was the perfect woman, dedicated wife, present mother, impeccable smile. But behind the mask, she was disappearing until she inherited an ancient mirror that didn't reflect her face, but her soul. And what she saw on the other side changed everything. This is the story of a woman who had to face her own shadow. A journey inward, a truth that asks no permission. The mirror didn't lie. And you? Do you have the courage to look? But before we continue, take a look to see if you've already subscribed to the channel, and leave in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know how far our stories can reach. The reflection that blinked. There are moments in life when something changes, and we don't know exactly what. We just feel it, a subtle discomfort, an invisible crack in the perfect surface we've built. For Helena, that moment came on an autumn afternoon, when leaves fell like secrets whispered by the wind. She had always been impeccable. Every gesture calculated, every word measured, every smile delivered at the exact moment. Dedicated wife, present mother, exemplary professional. Her life was a well-rehearsed performance, and she was the lead actress who never forgot her lines. But behind the stage, when the curtains closed and the audience dispersed, Helena felt something strange. An emptiness, a heavy silence that echoed within her like a room abandoned for years. That afternoon, she received the news. Her grandmother had passed away. The quiet woman who always looked at her with deep eyes, as if she could see something Helena didn't want to show. In the will, there was only one thing destined for her, an ancient mirror. When the delivery man brought the heavy wooden box, Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't fear. It was recognition, as if something inside her knew that this object wasn't just a mirror. She opened the box slowly. The frame was dark wood, carved with symbols that looked like ancient runes, intertwined circles, lines that crossed like destinies. The glass was clean, but there was a strange depth to it, as if it were possible to pass through it and reach another place. Helena hung it in the bedroom, next to the dresser. That night before sleeping, she approached it. She looked at the reflection. She saw what she always saw: the tired face, the lifeless eyes, the fine lines around the mouth of someone who smiles out of obligation. And then, it happened. The reflection blinked. Helena froze. She hadn't blinked. She was absolutely certain. Her eyes were fixed, wide open. But the reflection blinked. She stepped back, her heart racing. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. "I'm tired," she told herself. "That's all. I'm just tired." But when she looked again, the reflection was watching her with a disturbing intensity. It wasn't her. Or rather, it was her, but in a different way. The reflection's eyes seemed alive, questioning, as if they were judging the woman on this side of the mirror. Helena covered the mirror with a sheet and went to sleep. But she couldn't. She spent the entire night listening to the silence, that silence that had been inside her for so long, but now seemed to scream. In the following days, she tried to ignore the mirror. She averted her gaze when she passed by it, but she felt its presence like an invisible weight in the room. At night, she would wake up with the feeling that someone was watching her. And whenever she glanced over, the sheet seemed to have moved, as if something beneath it was breathing. A week later, curiosity overcame fear. Helena removed the sheet. She looked at herself again. This time, the reflection didn't blink. It smiled, but it wasn't the polite smile that Helena offered the world. It was a sad, resigned smile. The smile of someone who knows a painful truth and knows they can no longer run from it. Helena touched the glass with her fingertips. It was cold, but there was something more. A subtle vibration, like a heart beating on the other side. "Who are you?" she whispered to the reflection, and within her, a voice answered. It wasn't the mirror's voice. It was the voice she had always silenced, the voice she had buried under layers of duties, obligations, and what will they think? I am you. The part of you that you pretend doesn't exist. Helena pulled away abruptly. Her hands were trembling. The room seemed smaller, the walls closer. She left, closed the door forcefully, but she knew it was no use. The mirror had awakened something inside her, something she didn't know if she'd have the courage to face. That night, Helena dreamed. She dreamed she was standing before the mirror, but on the other side. She banged on the glass, screamed, begged to get out. On this side, another Helena watched her in silence, impeccable, smiling, dead inside, and when she woke up, with her heart racing and her hands sweaty, Helena realized something terrifying. She no longer knew which side of the mirror she was on. She no longer knew which was the reflection. And which was real. The mirror didn't lie. It never lied. But the truth it revealed was more frightening than any lie. And Helena, for the first time in years, felt fear. Not of the mirror, but of herself. Reflection. There are mirrors that reflect faces, and there are mirrors that reflect souls. Helena was standing before the second kind, and the question haunting her wasn't, "What will the mirror show me?" but rather, "Will I have the courage to look?" There are tears that never fall. They remain trapped inside us, frozen in time, like rivers that never reach the sea. Helena carried an entire ocean within her chest, and had never shed a single drop. She learned early on that crying was weakness, that strong women didn't allow themselves to crumble, that there was always someone depending on her, and she couldn't fail. So year after year, she swallowed her tears. She swallowed the disappointment when her husband stopped asking how her day was. She swallowed the loneliness when she realized her family only sought her out when they needed something. She swallowed the sadness when she abandoned her dreams to care for the dreams of others. She swallowed everything, and kept smiling. But the mirror remembered. 3 days after the first encounter with the strange reflection, Helena tried to return to her routine. She woke up early, made coffee, tidied the house, answered messages. The perfect life, automatic, empty. But something had changed. She felt the mirror calling her, like a magnetic presence pulling her toward the bedroom. In the afternoon, when the house was empty and the silence absolute, she couldn't resist. She climbed the stairs slowly, pushed open the bedroom door, and stopped before the mirror. She took a deep breath. She looked and saw. Her reflection was crying. It wasn't a discreet, contained cry. These were thick, desperate tears streaming down her face like rivers breaking through dams. The reflection's shoulders trembled. Her mouth was half open in a silent sob. Her eyes, those eyes that Helena had always kept dry, were red, swollen, devastated. But Helena's face on this side of the mirror was dry, completely dry. She raised her hand to her own face, touched her cheeks, nothing, no tears. But the reflection kept crying, more and more intensely, as if releasing years of accumulated pain. Helena felt a tightness in her chest, a terrible pressure, as if something inside her was trying to get out but couldn't. It was the pain she had never allowed herself to feel, the sadness she had always locked away, the despair she pretended didn't exist. "Why are you crying?" Helena whispered to the reflection, and the answer came from within her like an echo of herself. "Because you never cried for me." Helena staggered. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands trembling. She knew. She knew exactly what the reflection was talking about. She knew every tear not shed, every moment she pretended to be fine when she was shattered. The marriage. The marriage. When was the last time her husband touched her with affection? When was the last time he asked what she felt, what she dreamed, who she was beyond the wife who cooked and cleaned and smiled? She couldn't remember. She had become a ghost in her own home, useful, invisible, silent, and her daughter, Beatrice. 15 years of emotional distance disguised as adolescence. But Helena knew it wasn't just that. The girl saw her as a function, not as a person. "Mom, where's my blouse? Mom, take me to Julia's house? Mom, leave me alone." Never, "Mom, how are you?" Never, "Mom, I love you," and the work she had abandoned. The architecture career she loved. The creative projects, the feeling of building something with her own hands. All set aside when Beatrice was born. Because someone needs to take care of the house, because your husband earns well, because real mothers sacrifice. Helena sacrificed. And no one ever thanked her. No one ever saw. She looked at the mirror again. The reflection was still crying, but now there was something different in its gaze. It wasn't just pain. It was accusation, as if saying, "You abandoned me. You betrayed me. You pretended I didn't exist," and it was true. Helena had betrayed herself. She had abandoned the woman she was to become the woman others needed her to be. She had traded her essence for approval, her soul for convenience, And now the mirror returned it all. Every tear not cried, every scream not screamed, every piece of herself she had buried alive. Helena felt something breaking inside her. A deep, painful crack. She raised her hands to her face and for the first time in years allowed it. She allowed the pain to come. She allowed the tears to fall. She cried. She cried like she had never cried before. She cried for the dead marriage, for the distant daughter, for the lost career, for all the years she pretended to be fine, for all the times she said everything's fine when nothing was fine. And as she cried, something extraordinary happened. The reflection in the mirror began to dry its tears, slowly, gently, as if relieved, as if finally someone had heard its pain. When Helena stopped crying, exhausted, she looked at the mirror again. The reflection stared back at her with a different expression. It was no longer accusation. It was understanding, as if saying, "Thank you. Thank you for finally seeing me." Helena touched the mirror's glass with the palm of her hand. On the other side, the reflection did the same. And for a brief moment it seemed there was no more separation. Just two halves of the same soul, finally recognizing each other. But Helena knew this was only the beginning. The mirror had more to show, and she feared what would come next, reflection. Crying is not weakness. Crying is courage. It's the courage to feel what we always pretend doesn't exist. Helena was learning something the world never taught her, that we can only heal the wounds we dare to look at. And the mirror had no mercy. It showed everything. There is a rage that doesn't scream, that doesn't explode, that accumulates silently, day after day, like poison distilled in small doses. It's the rage of saying yes when we wanted to say no. The rage of the forced smile. The rage of being too good, too understanding, too patient. Helena knew this rage well. She carried it like a second skin, but never, ever had she allowed herself to feel it. It took 7 days after crying before the mirror for Helena to face it again. 7 days trying to convince herself that it had all been an episode, a moment of weakness, a trick of a tired mind. But deep down she knew. She knew the mirror wasn't finished with her. It was a Saturday morning. Her husband had left to play tennis with friends, as he did every Saturday, never asking if she wanted company or if she'd also like to do something. Beatrice slept late, doors locked, headphones always in her ears, invisible walls between them. Helena was alone. Again. She climbed the stairs like someone walking toward their own judgment. She entered the bedroom. She stopped before the mirror. She looked and saw hell her reflection was screaming, mouth wide open in a silent scream, eyes wide with fury, hands clenched in fists trembling with rage, the veins in her neck bulging, her face contorted in an expression that Helena had never, ever allowed to cross her face. It was pure hatred, devastating rage. Fury contained for years. Helena stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. But she couldn't look away, because for the first time she recognized that rage. She felt it, burning inside her like lava beneath the surface of a dormant volcano. "What are you angry about?" Helena whispered, knowing she was talking to herself, and the answer came like an avalanche. Everything. Rage at her husband. Rage at 23 years of marriage where she became an unpaid employee of his life. Rage at being the woman who cooks, cleans, organizes, smiles, gives up, but is never seen, never desired, never asked, "What do you want?" Rage at being predictable. Rage at being disposable. Rage at her daughter. Rage at being treated like a convenient servant. "Mom, where's this?" "Mom, do that." Never a sincere thank you. Never a "how are you, Mom?" Rage at having dedicated every second of the last 15 years to raising this girl, and now being treated like an inconvenient obstacle between her and freedom. Rage at her own family. At parents who only called when they needed a favor. At siblings who only appeared on holidays. At friends who disappeared when she became a mother. When she no longer had time to be fun, spontaneous. Rage at the world that expects women to be perfect mothers, dedicated wives, exemplary professionals, present friends, but never allows them to be simply human, never allows them to break, never allows them to say, "I'm tired of carrying all of you." And above all, rage at herself. Rage for having accepted it, for having bowed her head, for having swallowed every disrespect. every neglect, every moment she was treated as an accessory in her own life. Rage for having been a coward, for not having screamed, for not having left, for having chosen the security of the cage instead of the uncertainty of freedom. Helena felt her hands trembling, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Something inside her was awakening, something fierce, wild, long asleep. The reflection in the mirror kept screaming. But now Helena realized something. The scream had no sound because she had never given it a voice. The rage couldn't come out because she always locked it away. And the more she held it in, the more that rage grew, poisoning her from within. "I have the right to feel angry," Helena said aloud. And the phrase sounded strange, forbidden, liberating. The reflection stopped screaming, looked at her, waiting. Helena took a deep breath, and then for the first time in her life she allowed it. She allowed the rage to come. She allowed it to burn. She thought of her husband, of how he treated her like furniture. "I'm angry at you," she said to the emptiness, to the man who wasn't there. "Angry that you never ask me what I want. Angry that you use me as support for your life but never support mine." She thought of her daughter. "I'm angry at you for treating me like a servant, for thinking my love is obligation, not choice, for never seeing me as a person." She thought of her own life. "I'm angry at myself for erasing myself, for letting you all erase me." And as she spoke, something extraordinary was happening. The rage wasn't destroying her. It was freeing her. As if by recognizing it, by naming it, Helena was recovering a piece of herself that had been amputated. The reflection in the mirror changed. The fury slowly dissolved. In its place, something different emerged. It wasn't peace. It was strength, a raw ancestral strength that Helena didn't know she possessed. She approached the mirror. She touched the glass. She felt the vibration beneath her fingers. It was no longer fear. It was power. "You're not bad for feeling angry," Helena said to the reflection, to herself. "You're human." And for the first time the reflection nodded, but Helena knew the journey wasn't over yet. The mirror had more layers to reveal, more truths to unearth, and the next one, she sensed, would be the most painful of all, because it was one thing to recognize sadness, to accept rage. But what if the mirror showed not just what she was hiding, but what she had lost? Reflection. The rage we never express doesn't disappear, turns against ourselves, corroding from within, transforming us into shadows of what we could be. Helena was learning that feeling angry didn't make her bad. It made her alive, and the mirror, relentless, continued its work, returning to the woman the humanity she had sacrificed on the altar of perfection. There are ghosts that don't belong to the dead. They belong to the living who never lived, to the versions of ourselves we sacrificed, that we buried, that we pretended never existed. Helena was about to meet hers. 2 weeks had passed since the silent scream in the mirror. Something had changed in Helena. She spoke less, observed more. She looked at her husband with different eyes, not with hatred, but with a painful clarity. She looked at her daughter and saw not just the rebellious teenager, but the distance she herself had allowed to grow between them. She looked at her own life as if it were a house where she had never felt at home. And the mirror waited for her. That night, Helena couldn't sleep. Her husband snored beside her, oblivious as always. She got up silently, went downstairs, made herself a cup of tea. But her feet didn't take her back to bed. They led her to the room where the mirror was. It was the early hours of morning. The house was immersed in silence. The moon came through the window, bathing the mirror in a silver, ghostly light. Helena stopped before it. She didn't know why she was there. She only knew she needed to be. She looked at the reflection, and this time she saw something completely different. The reflection wasn't her. Or rather, it was her, but a different her. A Helena she didn't know but recognized deeply. The woman in the mirror was in a bright studio, surrounded by drawing tables, projects, architectural models. She drew with intense concentration, with passion, with life. She wore comfortable clothes, stained with paint. Her hair was loose, disheveled, free. And on her face, on her face there was something Helena hadn't seen in herself for years. There was joy. The woman in the mirror laughed to herself as she drew. She stood up, danced to music only she could hear, returned to drawing. There was an energy in her, a vibration, a presence. She was alive, Completely, intensely, dangerously alive, Helena felt her chest tighten, because she knew who that woman was. It was the Helena she could have been. The Helena who didn't abandon her career. The Helena who chose herself. The Helena who didn't say yes when she wanted to say no. The Helena who didn't marry due to social pressure. Who didn't have children because it was expected. Who didn't build a life based on others' expectations. It was the free Helena. Tears began to fall silently down Helena's face, but they were different from the tears of pain from the second chapter. These were tears of mourning. Mourning for a life she never lived. For a woman she never was. "I could have been you," Helena whispered to the mirror. And the Helena in the studio stopped drawing. She turned around. She looked directly at her, and smiled, and not a mocking smile, but one of understanding. Of compassion. "Yes, you could have." Helena approached the mirror, her hands trembling. She touched the glass as if wanting to cross through it, as if wanting to enter that studio, that life, that version of herself who was radiant and free. "I gave up everything," Helena said, her voice breaking. "I gave up my career because they said real mothers stay home. I gave up my freedom because they said marriage is sacrifice. I gave up myself because they said women who choose themselves are selfish." The Helena in the mirror kept looking at her in silence. "I did everything right," Helena continued, now crying openly. "I was the perfect wife, the dedicated mother, the obedient daughter. I did everything they asked of me. But no one ever asked me what I wanted, and I never had the courage to ask myself. It was then that something changed in the mirror. The studio scene began to transform. Helena saw other images, other versions of herself. A Helena traveling alone through Europe, backpack on her shoulders, wide smile, free. An older Helena, gray hair, surrounded by award-winning projects, recognized in her field. A Helena dancing in a bar, laughing loudly, not caring what anyone thought. A Helena painting in a garden, dirty with soil and paint, radiant. All these Helenas were possibilities. Lives she could have lived if she had made different choices, if she had had courage. "But it's too late," Helena said, her voice a desperate whisper. "I'm 46 years old. I'm trapped. My life is already defined." The Helena in the mirror slowly shook her head, and then she did something unexpected. She pointed to the studio door. The door was open. On the other side there was light. It's never too late. As long as you breathe, you can start over. Helena felt something breaking inside her, but it wasn't a destructive break. It was liberating, like chains breaking, like wings opening for the first time. She thought about the career she abandoned. There was still time to resume it. There were still projects inside her waiting to be created. She thought about the dead marriage. There was still a choice, to stay and try to rebuild something real, or to leave and rebuild herself. She thought about her daughter. There was still time to create a true connection, to show Beatrice that women don't need to erase themselves to be loved. She thought about herself, and realized something fundamental. The Helena she was didn't need to die, but the Helena she could be could still be born. "It's not about erasing the past," Helena said, more to herself than to the mirror. "It's about not letting it erase my future." The Helena in the mirror smiled again. And then, she did something extraordinary. She extended her hand, as if wanting to touch Helena's hand through the glass. Helena raised her own hand. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, and for an instant, just an instant, she felt it. She felt the possibility. She felt the freedom. She felt the version of herself she could still become. When she pulled her hand away, the scene in the mirror had changed. It was no longer the studio. It was just her normal reflection, but there was something different in her eyes. A determination, a flame. Helena knew what she needed to do. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick. But for the first time in decades, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. The mirror had one more lesson. One final revelation. And Helena now was ready to face it. Reflection. The most painful mourning is not for those who died. It's for the versions of ourselves we never allowed to live. But Helena was learning something revolutionary. That as long as there is life, there is choice. That it's never too late to be reborn. That the woman she could have been could still exist. Not in the past she lost, but in the future she could still create. There are moments when the entire world comes down to a choice, a single decision that separates who we were from who we will be. For Helena, that moment came on an ordinary morning, which had nothing ordinary about it. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the woman she could have been. 3 days in which Helena barely slept, barely ate, could barely pretend normalcy. Something was boiling inside her, an unbearable pressure, an urgent need to break, explode, transform. She woke up early that morning. Her husband had already left. Where to, she no longer even knew. Beatrice was still sleeping. The house was silent. But inside Helena there was a deafening tumult. She climbed the stairs like someone going to war. She entered the bedroom, and there it was. The mirror. Helena stared at it with a mixture of hatred and gratitude. Hatred for what it had revealed, gratitude for having revealed it. "It's over," she said aloud. "I've seen everything. I saw my tears. I saw my rage. I saw the woman I could have been. It's over." But the mirror wasn't finished with her. Helena approached, looked at the reflection, and then froze. Because this time, the reflection didn't show another version of her. It showed all the versions, simultaneously. It was the Helena who cried, the Helena who screamed with rage, the radiant Helena from the studio, the tired Helena of now, the little girl Helena who once dreamed big, the old Helena she would still become. All of them, all at the same time. Overlapping, fragmented like shattered glass reflecting 1,000 faces of the same soul. It was chaos. It was truth. It was unbearable. Helena stepped back, her breath caught. She felt dizzy. She felt nauseous. Because for the first time, she was seeing the totality of herself. Not just the perfect mask she showed the world. Not just the shadow she hid. But everything. The good and the bad. The light and the darkness. The strength and the weakness. The real woman, complete, frighteningly human. "I can't be all these women," Helena whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't carry all of this." And it was in that moment she understood. The mirror wasn't asking her to choose one version of herself. It was asking her to integrate them all. But how? How to live with pain and joy at the same time? How to accept that she was simultaneously strong and fragile, brave and cowardly, victim and accomplice of her own prison? The answer came not as words, but as sensation, as an ancestral knowing that emerges from the depths. Accepting. Simply accepting. Helena felt something moving inside her, a fierce, desperate resistance. The part of her that wanted to destroy the mirror, flee from the truth, return to the comfortable illusion of perfect life. She looked around the room. She saw the heavy lamp on the nightstand. Her eyes fixed on it. It would be so easy. Grab the lamp. Throw it at the mirror. Watch the glass shatter into 1,000 pieces. Destroy that cruel truth that tormented her. Helena picked up the lamp. Weighed it in her hands. Approached the mirror. All the Helenas in the reflection watched her. Waiting. Not with judgment, but with a deep curiosity. As if they themselves didn't know what would happen. Helena raised the lamp above her head. Muscles tense. Heart racing. And then she stopped. Because she realized something fundamental. Destroying the mirror wouldn't destroy the truth. The truth was in her. It always had been. The mirror only made it visible. Slowly, Helena lowered the lamp. Placed it back on the table. Her hands trembled violently. She turned back to the mirror. She looked at all the fragmented versions of herself. And for the first time, she didn't try to choose one. She didn't try to deny any of them. She didn't try to be only the good one, only the strong one, only the perfect one. "I am all of you," Helena said, her voice breaking. "I am the woman who cries and the one who has rage. I am the one who sacrificed herself and the one who dreams of being free. I am the one who failed and the one who can start over. I am broken and whole at the same time." Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears only of pain. There was something more, relief, liberation. "I am human," Helena whispered. "Just human." And then it happened. The fragmented images in the mirror began to merge, slowly, gently, like pieces of a puzzle finding their places. The Helena who cried joined with the one who screamed. The one who screamed merged with the one who dreamed. The one who dreamed integrated with the one standing there now before the mirror. And when the fusion was complete, Helena saw something extraordinary. She saw herself. Really herself. She wasn't perfect. She had dark circles. She had wrinkles. She carried the weight of years and choices on her shoulders. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. There was presence. There was strength. There was life. The reflection smiled. And this time, Helena smiled with it. Not the polite and empty smile of always, but a real smile, tired, imperfect, true. "Thank you," Helena said to the mirror. And in saying this, she knew she was thanking not the object, but herself. For having had the courage to look, for not having fled, for having crossed through the hell of knowing herself. She touched the glass one last time, felt the cold beneath her fingers. But now there was no more fear. There was no more separation. It was just her, whole, complete. Helena left the room, went down the stairs, went to the kitchen to make coffee. But something had changed. She moved differently, with more weight, with more presence. As if she finally inhabited her own body. Beatrice appeared in the kitchen, still drowsy, phone in hand as always. "Mom, where's my—" "Beatrice," Helena interrupted. Her voice was firm but not aggressive. "Sit here. I need to talk to you." The girl blinked, surprised. Helena never interrupted. Helena always attended, always served, always bowed. Beatrice sat down, confused. Helena took a deep breath. "I made mistakes. Many mistakes. I gave you everything you asked for. But I never showed you who I am. I never taught you that women aren't servants. That mothers are people. That love is an obligation, it's choice." Beatrice remained silent, eyes wide. "I'm going to change," Helena continued. "I'm going to resume my career. I'm going to seek what I abandoned. And maybe in this process I'll disappoint you. Maybe I won't always be available. Maybe you'll have to learn to manage on your own sometimes." She paused, her eyes fixed on her daughters. "But I promise to show you something more important. A woman who doesn't erase herself. A woman who chooses herself without stopping loving. A real woman." Beatrice said nothing, but something in her gaze changed. Perhaps surprise. Perhaps respect. Perhaps for the first time she was seeing her mother not as a function, but as a person. When her husband arrived that evening, Helena waited for him in the living room, not with dinner ready, not with a servile smile. She just waited. "We need to talk," she said. And they talked. It was difficult. It was painful, but it was real. For the first time in 23 years of marriage, Helena spoke her truth. She spoke about loneliness, about invisibility, about the dead marriage they both pretended was alive. He was shocked, defensive, then silent. "I don't know if we can fix this," Helena said. "But I know I won't pretend everything's fine anymore. So either we rebuild something real, or we have the courage to end it." It was the first time she said "I" without apologizing afterward. That night, Helena returned to the bedroom. She looked at the mirror one last time before sleeping. The reflection was simple. It was her, just her. No fragments, no alternative versions, no silent accusations. It was a tired woman but awake. Wounded but whole. Imperfect but real. And for the first time in decades, Helena looked at her own reflection and thought, "I recognize you. And I accept you." The mirror never lied. It only showed what she always pretended not to see. And now that she saw, now that she accepted, now that she integrated, Helena was finally free. Not free from difficulties, not free from pain, but free from the prison she herself had built. Free to be human, completely, dangerously, wonderfully human. Reflection. In the end, Helena realized the mirror was never her enemy. It was her teacher. It forced her to see what she always denied, that we are made of light and shadow, of strength and fragility, of successes and failures. And that true courage isn't in being perfect, it's in being whole. The mirror didn't lie. It never lied. It only returned to the woman the truth she had forgotten, that we can only truly love when we stop pretending, that we can only live fully when we accept all the parts of who we are. And you? When was the last time you looked at your own reflection without masks? When was the last time you had the courage to see not who you pretend to be, but who you really are? The mirror waits. It always has. The question was never, what will it show? The question always was, will you have the courage to look? And we reach the end of this story. Helena crossed through the mirror, not physically but internally. She found her repressed tears, her silenced rage, her abandoned dreams. And instead of fleeing, she embraced them. Instead of destroying, she integrated. This is not just Helena's story. It's the story of all of us. Each one carries an inner mirror, and most of us spend our entire lives avoiding looking at it. But transformation only happens when we stop running, when we have the courage to see our shadow, accept our imperfect humanity, and integrate all the parts we always denied. The mirror of your soul is calling. Will you answer? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for more journeys of self-discovery and stories that touch the soul. Leave in the comments, which reflection are you most afraid to see? The repressed sadness? The silent rage? The life you didn't live? We'll end our story here. See you in the next story. See you then.